By the time Ramesses XI died around 1070 BCE, the state was bankrupt. The royal necropolis was overrun with tomb robbers, and the government had essentially abandoned it. For centuries, the idea that one man ruled from the Delta to Nubia as the living incarnation of the god Horus had held the nation together. Now, that singular divine authority was completely shattered. It is tempting to view this era as a total collapse, but daily life for most Egyptians went on exactly as it had. Farmers still worked the fertile banks of the Nile, and everyday local temples continued to function without interruption. The state didn't die. Instead, political power simply diffused into the hands of competing regional factions, kicking off a 400-year stretch known as the Third Intermediate Period. Rather than descending into immediate civil war, Dynasty 21 began with a remarkably polite arrangement. The nation was split into two separate administrative zones, a northern royal capital and a southern theocracy. In the northern delta, a general named Smendes established himself as pharaoh in the city of Tanis. Lacking the immense resources of his predecessors, his builders dismantled older monuments and repurposed the stone to construct their new center of power. Meanwhile, in the southern city of Thebes, the High Priests of Amun controlled Upper Egypt. They commanded the extraordinary wealth of the Karnak temple complex, effectively governing as kings in all but formal title. They governed through a public oracle system. The physical statue of the god Amun would be carried in a procession, and priests would interpret the statue's movements as divine rulings on land disputes, criminal cases, and political appointments. To protect the legacy of earlier dynasties from rampant looting, these priests undertook a massive clandestine operation. They secretly exhumed the mummies of great New Kingdom pharaohs and reburied them together in hidden mountain caches. This coexistence signaled a shift in how the country was managed. Egypt had moved into an era where the blood of the pharaohs was no longer a prerequisite for governing the land. By 945 BCE, royal power shifted to leaders of Libyan descent. These Meshwesh tribesmen were not foreign invaders. They had served in the Egyptian military and lived in the Delta for generations, seamlessly adopting the hieroglyphic script and worshipping the local gods. The first ruler of Dynasty 22, Shoshenq I, managed to briefly reunify the country. He even launched successful military campaigns into the Levant, matching the biblical account of King Shishak sacking Jerusalem. But Shoshenq distributed authority to his sons and cousins, relying on tribal kinship over centralized bureaucracy. Over the next century, those family ties splintered. By Dynasty 23, local strongmen controlled independent territories, creating a bizarre reality where 5 individuals claimed to be pharaoh simultaneously. By treating political power as a family inheritance to be shared among cousins and sons, the Libyans turned the state into a collection of private estates. Without a central bureaucracy to hold them together, the country fractured with every new generation. While the north was dividing itself into rival factions, a unified power was gathering strength to the south in what is now Sudan. The Kingdom of Kush had spent centuries absorbing Egyptian culture and religion. In 747 BCE, the Kushite king Piye sailed north, conquering Egypt and establishing Dynasty 25. He demanded that his soldiers maintain strict ritual purity before entering any Egyptian city, treating his military campaign as an act of holy devotion. The Kushite kings approached Egypt as restorers. While the northern dynasties were recycling the monuments of their ancestors, these southern outsiders built new temples and restored ancient rituals with incredible fervor. This cultural renaissance reached its height under Pharaoh Taharqa. He resumed the long-abandoned practice of building pyramids for royal burials and ordered the construction of a towering colonnade to expand the temple at Karnak. This papyrus from the era shows how non-royals were also securing their own place in eternity. Without a centralized royal monopoly on religion, private individuals began purchasing personalized copies of the Book of the Dead to guide them through the afterlife. The Nubian rulers proved that Egyptian civilization could be rescued and elevated by outsiders who fiercely believed in its cosmic order. This southern renaissance ended abruptly with an enemy threat from the east. The Neo-Assyrian Empire had become the dominant superpower of the ancient Near East, and they set their sights on the wealth of the Nile. This carved relief illustrates the overwhelming military machinery of the Assyrian forces. In 671 BCE, King Esarhaddon invaded Egypt, crushed Taharqa's army, and captured the capital of Memphis. 7 years later, Ashurbanipal delivered an even more devastating blow. He marched his troops deep into the south and relentlessly sacked the ancient sacred city of Thebes. The Kushite rulers were driven back to Nubia permanently, bringing the Third Intermediate Period to a violent close. Internal political compromises kept Egyptian culture alive for 4 centuries, but those fractured institutions could not withstand the brute force of a modernized external military machine. How did the core identity of Egypt survive 400 years of shattered thrones and foreign rule? To the ancients, identity was definitional, not ethnic. If a foreign king maintained cosmic order, observed the correct rituals, and built temples, the population accepted them as a legitimate Egyptian ruler. The retreating dynasty 25 kings carried that pharaonic tradition back to their homeland. They built an enduring empire in Sudan, leaving behind dozens of steep-sided pyramids that outlasted both the Egyptian and Roman empires. Within Egypt itself, the culture survived at the grassroots level. Through small bronze devotions and local temple participation, the everyday population maintained their faith despite the endless rivalries of their kings. In the ashes of the Assyrian sack, the nation was once again fractured and occupied. In Part 10, we will see if the native Egyptians can reclaim their own land and spark the site renaissance.